My name is Ayara Silva. I'm 71 years old, and 3 days ago, the Amazon tried to kill something small and helpless. A flood rose so fast that animals couldn't escape. Trees were submerged. The river became a monster, and in the chaos, a baby sloth lost her mother, lost everything, and was dying slowly, clinging to a branch in the rising water. This is the story of the sloth who survived the flood, and the 71-year-old woman who went into dangerous waters to save her. I've lived alone in the Amazon rainforest for 19 years. My stilted house sits over the river, 2 meters above the water usually, high enough to be safe, high enough to watch the river flow peacefully below. I chose this life after my husband died. My children live in the city. They wanted me to come with them, but I couldn't leave the forest. This is my home. The green, the sounds, the river. I understand it. I respect it. And I know when it's angry. It was April 7th. Early morning, around 6 o'clock. I woke to the sound of rain. Not normal rain. Heavy rain. Torrential. The kind that falls straight down like a curtain. The kind that makes the river rise. I walked to my veranda, looked down at the river. It was already higher than yesterday, maybe 50 centimeters higher, flowing faster, brown with mud. This was dangerous, because the Amazon doesn't rise slowly here. When heavy rain falls upstream, hundreds of kilometers away, the water arrives hours later. Suddenly, violently, a flash flood. I've survived many floods in 19 years. You learn to read the signs, the color of the water, the speed, the sound. This one was going to be bad. By 8 o'clock, the river had risen another 1.5 meters. The water was now just 50 centimeters below my floor. My house that's usually 2 meters above the river, now just 50 centimeters. And still rising. I secured everything, moved my supplies to higher shelves, tied my canoe tighter, and I waited. Because you can't fight the Amazon. You survive it. You adapt. You respect it. The rain continued, heavy, relentless. Thunder rolled through the forest. The river kept rising. Debris floated past. Branches, leaves, whole tree trunks. The current was so strong it made a roaring sound, like a beast. At 9:30 in the morning, I heard something. Faint. Almost impossible to hear over the rain pounding on my roof and the river roaring below. But it was there. A high-pitched sound, thin, desperate, an animal crying. I moved to the window, listened carefully. There it was again, close, maybe 20 or 30 meters away. Something was in trouble, in the flood, calling for help that wasn't coming. I knew what I had to do. I had to go look. But going out in this flood was dangerous. The current was deadly. Debris could crush a canoe. One wrong move and you're swept away. People die in Amazon floods. Even experienced people, even strong people. But that crying continued. And I'm 71 years old. I've survived this forest for 19 years. If I don't help, who will? I put on my palm leaf hat, wrapped a cloth around my shoulders. I climbed down the wooden ladder from my house to my canoe. The river was so high that the ladder, usually 5 rungs, was now just 2 rungs above the water. I untied my canoe. The current immediately grabbed it, trying to pull it downstream. I used my paddle to push away from the house poles, and I entered the flood. The water was turbulent, angry, brown and thick with mud. The current was stronger than I expected. I had to paddle hard just to control the direction. Debris floated past, dangerously close. A large branch could flip my canoe easily. I moved slowly, carefully, following the sound, calling out, trying to locate the source. The rain made visibility poor. Everything was gray and wet and chaotic. Then I saw it. A tree, usually on the riverbank, now 3 meters deep in floodwater. Only the top branches still above the surface, and clinging to one thin branch, barely above the water, was something small, brown, Moving very, very slowly, I paddled closer, carefully. The current wanted to push me past. I used my paddle to catch against the tree, to hold position, and I looked up. A baby sloth, three-toed sloth, maybe 3 or 4 weeks old, the smallest thing I'd ever seen, completely soaked, her fur heavy with water, clinging desperately to a branch that was bending dangerously. Her mouth was open, making that thin crying sound, looking for her mother, but her mother was gone. Sloths are strange animals, beautiful but strange. They move slower than any mammal on Earth. They spend their entire lives in trees, hanging upside down, moving so slowly you can barely see them move, and they cannot swim. Not well. If a sloth falls in water, it struggles. It can drown. This baby's mother must have been in the tree when the flood came. Too fast, too sudden. The water rose and swept the mother away, or drowned her, and this baby was left, alone, on a branch, above water that would kill her if she fell. I had to get her, but the rescue would be difficult. I was in a small canoe, in strong current. The branch was above my head. I would have to stand up in the canoe to reach her. Standing in a canoe in flood current is extremely dangerous. One wrong move and I tip over, into the flood, at 71 years old. But looking at this tiny creature, soaked and scared and crying, I knew I had to try. I positioned the canoe carefully, used my paddle wedged against the tree to stabilize. Then, very carefully, I stood up. The canoe rocked. The current pushed. I reached up toward the baby sloth. She was clinging so tight. Her long claws gripped the branch with desperate strength. Sloths have incredibly strong grips, even baby sloths. It's their survival mechanism. They hang from trees their entire lives. They never let go. I spoke to her softly, in Portuguese, gentle words, trying to calm her. I reached under her small body, tried to loosen her grip carefully. She didn't want to let go. Her instinct was to hold on, to never release. Finally, with gentle persistence, I got her free. I held her against my chest, and I sat back down in the canoe quickly. The canoe rocked violently, almost tipped, but I steadied it. The baby sloth immediately gripped my shirt with those long claws, gripped so tight I couldn't have removed her if I tried. This is what baby sloths do. They cling to their mothers, constantly, for months, never letting go. And now she was clinging to me, this strange human, because I was all she had. I began paddling back toward my house. This was harder. I was tired. The current was against me, and I had one arm holding the sloth steady while paddling with the other. The rain was still falling. The river was still high, and I'm 71 years old. It took 40 minutes to paddle back. 40 minutes of exhausting work, fighting the current, avoiding debris, protecting this tiny life against my chest. By the time I reached my house, my arms were shaking. My back was screaming, but we made it. Both of us, alive. I tied the canoe, climbed the ladder, the baby sloth still clinging to my shirt, so tight. Her claws actually hurt, but I didn't mind, because she was safe now, out of the flood, out of the rain, safe. Inside my house, I gently tried to remove her from my shirt, but she wouldn't let go. Sloths don't let go. It's against their nature. So I sat down, and I waited, speaking softly to her, stroking her wet fur gently, and gradually, slowly, her grip loosened, just a little. Enough for me to carefully move her to a soft towel. I could see her clearly now, and she was incredible. Her face was small and round, with huge dark eyes, taking up so much of her face. The biggest, darkest eyes I'd ever seen. She had a small upturned nose and a gentle expression, almost like she was smiling. Even in her distress, she looked peaceful. This is the sloth way. Everything slow, everything gentle. Her fur, when dry, was brown-gray and fluffy, soft. Her body was so small, maybe 250 grams, about the weight of an apple. And she had these long, curved claws, 3 claws on each limb, designed perfectly for hanging from trees, for never falling, for surviving in the canopy. But she was so vulnerable now. Baby sloths stay with their mothers for 6 months, learning, growing, drinking mother's milk. This baby was maybe 1 month old, too young to survive alone, too young to find food, too young to avoid predators. Without her mother, without human help, she would die. I dried her carefully, checked for injuries. She had none, just scared, traumatized, orphaned, but physically okay. I prepared food. This was challenging. Baby sloths drink their mother's milk. I don't have sloth milk, but I know the forest. I made a mixture. Hibiscus flower milk, diluted, warm. I offered it in a small bottle. She looked at it. Slowly. Everything sloths do is slow. Finally, her small mouth opened. She drank. Tiny amounts. It took 30 minutes for her to drink maybe 10 milliliters. Because sloths do everything in slow motion. Even eating, even drinking, even surviving. Over the next hours, she began to calm. The trauma was fading. She looked around my house with those huge, curious eyes. And then she did something that made me smile. She reached up, grabbed a wooden beam, and pulled herself up to hang. Upside down. This is sloth nature. They must hang. They're only comfortable hanging. Even baby sloths know this instinctively. She moved along the beam, so slowly, taking 5 minutes to move 1 meter, her claws gripping, her body swaying gently. And I realized she was going to be okay. Physically, she was recovering. But emotionally, she was an orphan, lost, alone. That night, she slept hanging from my beam, upside down, her head tucked against her chest, her claws gripped tight even while sleeping. Sloths sleep 15 to 20 hours per day. They're the sleepiest animals on Earth. Everything about them is slow. Their movement, their metabolism, their heart rate, their entire existence is slow motion. By day 3, the flood had receded. The river returned to normal levels. The rain stopped. The forest began to recover. I took the baby sloth outside, looking for any sign of her mother. But sloths are nearly impossible to find. They blend perfectly with trees. They move so slowly you miss them. And they're solitary. The mother, if she survived, would be kilometers away by now. And even if she was close, reuniting them would be impossible. I don't know which tree she came from. I don't know where her territory is. This baby was orphaned. And in the Amazon, an orphaned sloth baby this young cannot survive alone. She would starve, or be eaten by a predator, or fall and be unable to climb back up. So I made a decision. She would stay with me for at least 6 months, maybe longer, until she's old enough, strong enough, big enough to survive independently. I'll teach her what I can, about the forest, about the trees, about finding food, and when she's ready, I'll help her return to the wild. I've named her Lua. It means moon in Portuguese, because she has those huge, round, luminous eyes, like the full moon, and because she's nocturnal, active at night, sleeping during the day. Now, 3 days after the flood, Lua lives in my house, hanging from my beams, moving in slow motion across my ceiling. She eats slowly, she drinks slowly, she does everything slowly, because she's a sloth, and that's what sloths do. Is this natural? No. Sloths don't live with humans. But Lua would be dead without this intervention. The flood killed her mother, left her orphaned, and I was there. I heard her crying, and I couldn't let her die. People might say I risked too much. That one baby sloth isn't worth going into dangerous flood waters. At 71 years old, with deadly current and debris, they might say I was foolish. But when I look at Lua hanging from my beam with those enormous peaceful eyes, moving in her beautiful, slow way, I know I made the right choice. Because every life has value, even the slowest life. even the smallest life, even in the biggest, wildest forest on Earth. This is the Amazon. This is survival. This is adaptation. And this is compassion. One tiny orphaned sloth and one 71-year-old woman, both choosing to survive, both finding purpose, together. My name is Ayara Silva. This is the story of Lua, the baby sloth who survived the flood. And this is why I'll always go into the water, for the small voices crying in the trees, for the tiny lives that need a chance. This is Jungle Ayara. This is my purpose. This is my life in the rainforest.